All right, ladies and gentlemen, hello, hello, hello. I am going to tell you how this is going to work. So it's also being recorded and it'll be put up on Classroom just in case you want to see it at a later time. I'll be posting them. So the way this is going to work is I'm not doing anything on the live stream. I'm not keeping you all entertained. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the slides and I'm going to explain some of the slides and I'm going to go to the document that you're supposed to be doing, which is called supply and demand. So you've already had a half an hour. So I understand, or I'm assuming that you have checked the materials, watched my good morning video. You have also looked at the different assignments, the slides. You've looked through them. You have looked at the document, the supply and demand document you're required to do, because it requires watching a 6-minute video and you can't do that while I'm trying to explain it. So that's why I wrote that down. So I'm assuming that you have been doing things for the last half hour. So what I need you to do is the way we're going to do is, like I said, there's going to be different tabs up on my computer. So I don't expect you to sit here and stare at me. Okay. Hi, David. I don't expect you to stare at me while this is going on. That's not what this is. You are clicking on tabs, right? And you are going with me as I go through the tabs. So, or as I go through the notes, you're following along. So I will tell you what slide I'm on, and you should be on that slide too. So I give you an idea of how it's going. All right. Again, you're not watching me. If you're sitting here just watching me, that's completely useless. You need to have your tabs up too. I will come back to this tab and I will check the live stream to see if there's any questions that have to do with the lecture. And that's how it'll be working. So you definitely have 2 tabs up besides for this one. The first one is the notes, the slides that I gave you this morning. You should have those up and ready to go because that's the first thing I'm going to go through step by step. The second thing you should have up is the supply and demand document that I posted this morning as well, right? So those are the 2 tabs you need up because I'm going to go through the slides first. Axel, I already changed your grade. And if that's all you're signing on for, then sign out. I mean, come on, Axel, relax with the grade. It's already changed. I promise you. So we're going to go to the slides. If you have anything to ask me about grades or anything else, please, like I've been saying for the last 2 weeks, a private comment. This stream is like being in the classroom. So if we're in the classroom together and you start asking me about grades, how do I react? That's the same way I'm going to react on a live YouTube stream if you start asking me about grades when I'm trying to tell you about architecture. All right. So that is what I'm talking about. All right. So your 2 tabs up. You have your slides from today and you have your handout from today. So we're going to work on the slides. So if you click over to the slides, you'll see that the first one says that it's Unit 4. We are talking about land and water use. This is lesson 2. How do the different types of agriculture compare to each other? So agriculture is farming, is growing food. So we are talking about different ways that that's done, different styles that agriculture is done in. So I'm moving right past slide 2, which is an agenda. I'm moving past slide 3 and 4 and 5, which is a review, slide 6 as well. So when you open slide 7, you'll see that this is the objective, right, for the day. So when you're done with this, you should be able to compare and contrast the different types of agriculture, okay? So when we go to slide 8 is, or actually, yeah, slide 8 is just a fact that's kind of interesting. Worldwide, 99.7% of our food, of human food, comes from the land. All right. So only 0.3% comes from the oceans, comes from seafood and stuff like that. So that's a pretty interesting thing. What that tells us is that we have to protect our agriculture and we have to do a good job because if something happens on those fronts, we're going to lose a lot of food for humans. And that's not a good thing. So when we are looking at how different types of agriculture compare to each other, I'm flipping over to slide 9 now. And it says, how do different types of agriculture compare, right? So each acre of tillable land is not equally productive. What that means is tillable land means fertile soil, land that you can farm on and grow something on, right? So each acre of tillable land is not equally productive, meaning there are different nutrients in the soil in different areas of a town, a state, a country, right? So depending on what's going on with the soil, they will not as be equally productive. You might be able to grow corn, down south where it's hot and moist, but you're probably not going to get as good of a yield. You're not going to get as much of it as if you grow it in an area where the land is more likely to support it. Okay. Irrigation practices, fertilizers, and erosion problems are more and more all contribute to just how much land is needed in order to produce food, which is very, very true. So, different places need different irrigation. They need different ways to water their crops. Some don't need any irrigation because they're near water sources. Others need irrigation pipes to be brought in or ditches to be diverted from rivers, right? So there's a bunch of stuff going on there. Let me check back to the live stream. Okay. Hey, Nick. All right. So going back to the slide. So we are still on slide 9, right? And it talks a little bit. I'll let you read through that. It gives you an example of in China, United States, and different things where the crops come from. So if we're moving to 10, slide 10, how do different types of agriculture compare to each other? So the different kind of cropping systems, the different kind of ways we grow things vary among farms depending on a couple of variables. Some of them are available resources and constraints, right? So is there enough? Is there enough soil? Is there enough land? Is there enough property? That's important. Geography and climate of the farm. Where is it, right? What is the temperature? Can you grow this in this type of climate? Can you grow bananas in a cool climate? Can you grow soybeans in a warm climate, right? And geography plays an important part. Where are you globally? Do you get a lot of sun? Does the sun last all day? Things like that. Government policy. Sometimes the governments will put restrictions on what you can grow, how much of it you can grow, or how much you have to grow. One of the government policies that comes to mind right now is medical marijuana farms, right? Government puts a lot of policies down, so you can't just open up a medical marijuana farm if you want to. But just down the street from me, they had the government passed a bill that said that they can actually have a farm. It's about 5 minutes away from me, and they can grow medical marijuana. So there are government policies that restrict where and what you can grow. There's economic and political pressures as to what you should grow. Sometimes we need more corn and wheat. So if I'm a farmer and I want to farm something different like soybean, sometimes you will have pressure put on by local governments saying, look, the need for corn, the need for wheat is much higher. So we need you guys to grow this. So you sort of get pressured into doing that. And the way they do that is they give you incentives. They give you tax breaks if you grow corn or if you grow wheat on your land instead of something else. So there is that to consider. And the philosophy and culture of the farmer. Sometimes farmers have a philosophy where they don't want to use any kind of fertilizers and they want to be organic. Sometimes the farmers are profit driven and they want to make money and they don't care about what kind of fertilizers they use. So there's a lot of different ways or different types that agriculture can come into play. Moving into 11, here's where the different types of agriculture start. This is really what we're getting into. So in slide 11, it says monoculture, right? So there's two we're going through, mono and polyculture. You guys know mono means one. You guys know poly means many. So monoculture is the practice of growing a single crop or plant species over a wide area for a large number of years. Monoculturing is what you see when you drive around and you see these huge cornfields or you see these huge wheat fields. Farmers growing the same crop, only that crop, on the same plot of land year after year. Okay. The first thing that comes to mind, and it says it on this slide, in slide 11, the first thing that comes to mind is biodiversity. We just did biodiversity last week. It's dangerous to grow one species of plant year after year on the same land, because if you get a pest, if you get a bug, if you get a disease, it's going to wipe out the whole crop. There's no chance for you producing any food that year to sell or to feed your family or whatever. So you can end up being screwed with that. So monoculture is not the best way to do it. They do find ways to make monoculture a little bit easier or a little bit better And that's what slide 12 talks about. So, oh, actually, no, slide 12 talks about the dangers, like I just said. If you are growing the same thing on the same land year after year, not only do you have to worry about pests, but you also have to worry about the dirt. The dirt has nutrients in it. And if you're growing the same thing year after year on the same piece of land, that dirt is going to get used up. There's not going to be enough nutrients in it. It's going to become acidic. You're going to lose nitrogen. You're going to lose phosphorus. So um, the longer you plant on a field, the longer you farm on a piece of dirt, the more you have to consider what's happening to the soil. That's what slide 12 is talking about. When you move to slide 13, this is the ways we try to make monoculture not so bad. Some farmers will do something called shifting cultivation. Shifting cultivation is when you grow on plots of land. So what you'll do is you'll grow all your crops on one big, huge plot of land for a couple of years. And then you'll take those crops, you'll take the seeds and you'll grow them on a different plot of land. So you're moving around, not far. Maybe you have 100 acres and you're doing it in 25-acre plots, right? So you'll use one 25-acre plot for a couple of years. Then you'll abandon that and you'll go to a new plot. What you're doing is you're letting that land rejuvenate itself. You're letting the nutrients come back into the soil by leaving it alone for a couple of years, right? So that's what shifting cultivation is. Look, I'm just going to sort of bounce it around and move my crops around and just use these three parts and leave this one better. And it's almost like a rotation, okay, of that. And that helps keep the soil more stable. So that's what slide 13 was talking about. Slide 14 gets into polyculture. Polyculturing is the agriculture using multiple crops in the same space. So monoculture, you were growing one thing. You were growing corn, you were growing soybeans, or you were growing wheat or whatever. But polyculture is when you are growing multiple crops in the same place. Okay. So when we go over back to that on more slide 14, let's look what slide 15 says. Oh, so there are different types of and the reason, staying on 14 for a second, when you look at polyculture, one of the good things about polyculture, again, biodiversity. Now, if you have three things growing on your farm and bugs kill one of them, at least you have two other forms of food and forms of income if you're selling it, right? So polyculture is a good way to cover yourself in an event of something happening to the corn. At least you still have wheat and soybeans or whatever the heck you're growing, right? So there's different examples for slides 15 and 16. If you look in the speaker notes, I want you to find diagrams or pictures and paste them here of these different examples of polyculture. So the polyculture examples include crop rotation, multi-cropping, intercropping. Then on slide 16, it says companion planting, alley cropping, and beneficial weeds. So you can go and you can research those 6 examples and you can throw up some sort of diagram. If there's no diagram, you can simply define it. That's fine. Do that in the speaker notes for slides 15 and slides 16. Moving on to the last slide, slide 17, you have diversity of crops. And this is what we were talking about, so I really don't have to go into this too much. The diversity of crops avoids the susceptibility of monocultures to disease, right? So one of the biggest advantages over polyculture is that you have biodiversity and you have protection in case something happens to one type of your crop. So even if you're just growing corn or just growing soybeans or just growing wheat, there's an example here on the slide that talks about China, right? China grows a lot of rice. Asian countries grow a lot of rice. The climate is perfect for it. So in China, in order to keep it polyculture, they do different species of rice, right? So just because it's rice doesn't mean it's the same genetic makeup. There are different species of rice, like there's different species of, or different kinds of dogs, right? So there are different kinds of rice. By putting different kinds of rice in the same area, rice all needs the same types of nutrients and the same types of climate. So growing rice is very easy to do in China. But by growing the different kinds, then you have a more a safer way to do it in case anything happens to one of the species. The disease only affects this genetic makeup of rice and not that one. So we used to do that with corn a lot too in the United States in the early 50s and 40s even, I think. But then we moved into genetic engineering and we found the best corn and blah, blah, blah. but that's for another time. When you go to slide 18, you'll see that there's a guided practice that just says, see the supply and demand hand. All right. And that is what you're going to continue on. So I'll pop back over to the live stream to make sure I don't have any boogers or anything. Okay, I look just like I do every other day of this wonderful quarantine. So that's the slides. This is going to be recorded. You can go back. You can ask any questions you want. I have that shared document that I gave you. So if you have any questions, specific questions about the slides themselves or about the types of agriculture, mono versus poly, you can put them down on the slide, on the shared slide. Next thing you're opening is the supply and demand activity that I attached. So hopefully you are looking at that right now and not my ugly mug. When you look at the supply and demand vocabulary, this is why I wrote this in the instructions this morning. You were supposed to watch the YouTube video. It's 6 minutes of a guy drinking a gallon of milk, which is kind of gross because he actually finishes it in like 6 minutes. But he is talking about the milk industry and he's talking about supply and demand. So he's explaining to you supply and demand by using milk as an example, by saying, okay, what happens when we have too much milk and nobody wants to buy it? What happens when we don't have enough milk and everybody wants to buy it, right? So that's the whole law of supply and demand, which I'm going to let you look up yourselves. But after you watch the video, the first half of him is talking, the first half of the video is him talking about law of supply, law of demand, vocabulary words like surplus and shortage and equilibrium. So when you look at the left side of this document, you'll see that there are 5 questions. And the 5 questions are not really questions, they're sort of scenarios, and you have to match some words with it. So I think 3, 4, and 5 are pretty easy, pretty straightforward for you to answer. Questions 1 and 2. Questions 1 and 2 are asking, so for question 1, when the price goes up, people buy less. And when the price goes down, people buy more. Does that sound like you to the law, like the law of supply or the law of demand? So is that a supply thing or is that a demand thing? And I'm going to leave that up to you to decide. And then number 2 says if the price goes up, the producer has an incentive to make more to increase profit. Is that law of supply or law of demand? I'm going to let you guys figure that out. All right. So 3, 4, and 5 just have to do with shortage, surplus, and equilibrium. And I think they're pretty self-explanatory, especially if you read the hints in the parentheses. I don't want to dwell too much on that. What I wanted to get to is the right side of the document, because the right side of the document is what people are going to say, I don't really understand. I don't know what you're talking about. Well, the second half of the video that you were supposed to watch, he explains things called shifters. You can have things happen that will shift your supply or shift your demand, right? I kind of look at them as variables that will change the supply and variables that will change the demand. So the first five questions there are about supply shifters. What variables will change the supply? And they give you the first one. They say price of resources, right? Oh, the example they want you to use in the directions up top is dog food, right? So we're talking about dog food now. Price of resources. Well, if you're making dog food, right? This is about the people that make it now. Supply is the people that make it. I'm making dog food. So price of resources. We know that most dog food has chicken in it, or whatever they want to call chicken. So if the price of chicken goes up, well, what does that mean? That means that I either have to pay more for my supplies to make my dog food, or I have to decrease my, say, okay, instead of making 100 bags a week, since chicken went up and it's so expensive to get, I'm just going to make 75 bags a week and see if I can get through with that, right? See if that's enough for my customers. So the price of the things that go into dog food, the resources that go into dog food, a main ingredient, bacon, chicken, whatever, if those prices go up or down, then that's going to affect how much supply you're going to keep in your warehouse. Right? That's the first example. When you look at number 2, number of manufacturers, right? Okay, I'm making dog food and I have a successful business where I'm selling this dog food. And then all of a sudden there's 5 more manufacturers that have dog food and it all looks the same, it all tastes the same, and it all has all this fun pictures on the bag, right? Well, if the number of manufacturers increases, instead of me, one person selling dog food at this store, now there's 15 people selling dog food at this store. My profits are going to drop. Not everyone's going to just buy mine. So in response to that, I have to lower my supply, right? If I lower my supply, then I can look, instead of selling 10 bags at Walmart, now there's all these other choices because there's more manufacturers. So now I end up saying, okay, well, Instead of selling 10 or 20 bags, I'm only selling 3. So I need to lower my supply so I can keep my business in equilibrium, right? That's kind of what they're asking you. Technology, right? So this is the last one I'm gonna help you with. Technology. Well, what does that mean? How the heck can technology have anything to do with dog food? I think about it this way. A couple of years ago, I didn't have this choice, but now I do. I get my dog food sent to me. I subscribe through Amazon to have a 40-pound bag of food or whatever it is come to me every month. Right. So it's delivered to me. I don't have to worry about anything. I don't have to pick it up. I don't have to carry it through the store. I don't have to do anything. Right. Technology made it easier for me, but it made it harder for the people that aren't using that technology. So if you're a company that isn't using the technology of subscribing through Amazon, then you're sitting there with your food on the shelves that nobody's buying because they don't want to carry it home. They're just getting it delivered. So that's how technology affects supply. So now as a supplier, I have to get online and start selling online, or I'm going to lower my supply because not everybody's buying from me anymore. That's the way you look at it. So number 4 or 5, I'm going to let you deal with yourself. Demand is us. Demand is what would make us buy or sell, right? Or buy it or not buy it. What's the demand, right? So the taste preferences, right? Number 1 is, it's okay. Number 1 is taste and preferences. Tastes and preferences. Okay. What if my dog food tastes like crap? What if someone else makes a dog food that tastes better? What's going to happen? The demand for my dog food is going to go down. You're not going to want to buy my food if your dog doesn't like it. So that's just obvious, right? Preferences. Preferences could be the ingredients. Maybe I make my dog food cheap and maybe I don't put very good ingredients in it. And maybe chicken is the 15th ingredient in my list, and the person's bag right next to mine, it's the second ingredient in the list, right? So preferences. Customers are going to say, okay, I want this one because of this, or I want this one because of this. And it could be anything. It could be ingredients. It could be the picture on the bag. It could be the person that endorses it. Rachel Ray endorses dog food, right? And everybody wants that because they like her, or whatever the case may be. So tastes and preferences will definitely drive demand. Oh, I got to get this because I watched a celebrity feed it to their dog and they said it was great. Things like that, right? So I'm going to let you go through number 2, 3, 4, and 5, the number of consumers and all that fun stuff, because it's 12:27 and we're about to leave. I'm glad there's a few of you sitting on here, so that's cool. I'm going to Zoom eventually at night so we can have fun, but this isn't really for fun. This half hour, this is pretty much the way it's going to go. I'm going to let you do some work for the first half hour of your scheduled time. And I still post early in the morning. So if you want to get it done before that half hour, that's fine. Tomorrow I'll be posting for my other classes. You won't get a post from me. You won't get any work from me tomorrow. So think of it as an every other day, right? That's what should be happening. So any teachers, you should have just gotten work today from first, second, third, and fourth period. If anybody else in any other period put posted work, then you got a problem because they shouldn't have done that. All right. And I'm just letting you know that. So you really only have 4 classes a day. You have 12:30 to 2:30 free time, but we're not going to call it that. We're going to call it work time, where that's when you're supposed to be saying, okay, Graf just went through all this stuff. Now I have some time to get it done. There's no excuse why you shouldn't be handing things in the same day. Now, I don't necessarily mean at 2:30 because I know you guys have busy lives. But if you look on the schedule, Mr. Ray said it should be completed, between 12:30 and 2:30 or that evening if necessary. So that sort of means that you guys should be getting this into me by the end of today. Now, also keep in mind, I won't have new work for you guys for my period 4 until what's today? Until Wednesday, right? So does that mean that you can't hop on tomorrow if you finished everything else and you want to do that? That's cool too. I don't mind. Okay. Keep sending me private messages. I fixed everyone's grades that mentioned something to me. The easiest way to do that, I don't know how many times I have to say this, private message me. Private message me. I get an email that says you have a private message. Chris did it about 30 minutes ago. I got it right away. I was able to change the grade. Don't wait for a live session. Don't wait for anything. Don't sit around thinking I'm going back and looking. If you didn't do it in time, if you didn't do it when I assigned it, then I don't go back. You have to tell me that, hey, I got this done a little late. Go check it. And I'll go check it. No problem. All right. So keeping on top of your grades is important, and I appreciate that. You're signing in every day, and I appreciate that. Keep doing the work. Keep turning it in. The grades for the test that you had on Friday are going to be going in this afternoon. tomorrow morning by the latest. So keep that in mind. Finish everything up. Keep going, doing what you're doing. I will talk to you later. This will be recorded and put up on the classroom. So any of your friends that didn't see it, if they want to, they can always revisit it then. I will talk to you guys. We got a Zoom soon. I'll put it out there maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. Talk to you.